I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. Okay, so we're over to Portland, Oregon today, and my guest is going to be of real interest to those of you that are thinking about doing different things, you know, a kind of multi-hyphen life. So she's an multi-instrumentalist, keyboards, percussion, bass, vocals, and also a DJ. And she's also a real estate advisor and is involved in charitable work. She's with a band that has always paddled against the tide, been firmly unconventional, yet, you know, kind of like always cool, treated experimentation pretty much as their, you know, kind of slightly off center, but couldn't live without you housemate, and really always sort of follow, you know, musical instruments. And that, to me, is why they leave all other cool way in the distance. And believe me, if I could, I would certainly shake my hips to them. So huge welcome to Zia McCabe of the Dandy Warhols. Welcome, Zia.
Hi.
Hey. So when I was kind of doing some prep, I remembered obviously the big, I was thinking about, you know, kind of marketing for some reason. And I remembered the, you know, kind of big ad that Vodafone did, you know, for Bohemian Like You. And then I didn't realize this at the time, but I found out that also Holden in Australia and also GM had kind of used it in their adverts to promote their kind of cars. And they, you know, kind of edited out the words, you got a great car, what's wrong with it today? They edited out that bit. And I think,
who did that? Really?
Yeah. Did you not know? Yeah.
No.
Holden and I think even Citroen took out the vocals.
Wow.
Citroen made it a kind of like an instrumental. And I mean, you know, I kind of thought, you know, you want to use a really sort of cool song to give your kind of conventional suburban car the bit of the kind of cool factor, and then you basically sort of fuck up the song by splicing it wrong and, you know, making it.
Yeah, we hear terrible edits of stuff. We're like, just ask us to give you an edit that everybody can live with, because this, really, really bad edits.
I was like, oh my God, I thought I must mention to that. My daughter's, I just mentioned she's studying marketing. I must mention that to her as a kind of like an example of really how not to do it. But there you go. I noticed, I saw in your email signature, you've got rock and roll veteran.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
Thank you. I mean, when you're, especially in a new venture, but really anytime in life, you want to use all your assets, right?
Absolutely.
And any advantage you can get. And when I was first starting in real estate, I'm like, and it's an ongoing process how to brand these rock and roll and real estate together, not the easiest thing. But I was like, how do I still include that, like, you know, this is my identity, right? Because just trusted real estate advisor did not sound like my identity. And it's obviously much more part of my identity now, but not when I was brand new.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do rock and roll real estate. Like, that just can never be in my vernacular or description. But rock and roll veteran really sounded like the right way to say, I could still be in music. I might not be in music anymore, but it is a huge part of my identity.
Absolutely.
And I work with so many artists that I didn't want to in any way alienate that branding.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the best words I could find in my brain.
Did you know that it's also a track name,
rock and roll veteran?
Yeah, by a guy who has got the most wonderful name. He's a German guy, and he's called Lars Vegas.
Lars Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's brilliant. And it's off his album. This is how much of a nerd I am. It's off his album called Kusa, Jeans and Rock and Roll.
What jeans and rock and roll?
Kusa, German for kiss.
Oh.
German for kisses. Kisses, jeans and rock and roll.
How do you spell it?
K-U-S-S-E.
Oh, that seems right. Because that's funny. These the glasses that anytime you see me in any kind of glasses, corrective or sunglasses. They're always by Vinyl Factory Eyewear out of France. They're really, really cool guys that started the business and huge music fans.
Okay.
So they go to any concert they want to go to with a tray of frames for the artists. And
brilliant.
So they of course have like every cool artist ever on their Instagram page wearing their specs.
Brilliant. Yeah.
The inside, they do all kinds of cute stuff, but it's like, can you see it's like a guitar?
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Got it.
Inside, which there's probably no way you'll see it, but right here it says specs, mugs, and rock and roll.
Brilliant.
And I thought that was cute. And their little lens cleaners are like a 45 printed on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't miss a beat, those guys.
I was going to say, they've really sort of done everything there, haven't they? They kind of got everything nailed down.
They thought of all of it. And their lenses are the cutest. They've got great designers.
So you mentioned just a little bit ago about you know, kind of identity, and obviously you've had a you know, kind of shift, you know, the last few years, you know, with becoming a real estate advisor, but kind of going back to your kind of formative influences that, you know, kind of led to your kind of like mindset, you know, either individuals, events, you know, the environment, you know, ways of life, that kind of stuff. What kind of, you know, what was it like? How did you, you know, kind of, how did your identity sort of form?
As far as like seeds of creativity or like the specific niches of creativity that I ended up in?
I guess anything, to be honest with you. You know, kind of like how you sort of ended up, how you kind of evolved as, you know, from, you know, kind of young Zia to, you know, kind of like how you got into the band, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, both my parents, while maybe not as overtly creative while I was growing up as I see them both now. I mean, grandfather's musicians on both sides, but no direct exposure to music, right?
Right.
For me, my dad had a great record collection.
Yeah.
Some of my mom's too, but so that my introduction to music was amazing with Pink Floyd and the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Billie Holiday, and it was just never ending. I have that record collection at times 4 now, but so there was this kind of the music, but my mom's creativity really showed in her, like her gardening and sort of the way that she manifested being kind of a hippie and a counterculture person.
Yeah.
My dad's was all engineering and building and design. So he built the log cabin that I grew up in, still lives there, has added buildings. He rebuilds old classic cars. He's built an engine from scratch. And now he does all kinds of really cool metal work and much more creative than he did at first. And my mom now does like fiber art, basket weaving, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are the ways that those guys were creative. And for me, my first creative outlet was dance. Right. I really wanted to be a dancer. And dance lessons just eventually became cost prohibitive, and we lived quite rurally. So once I got old enough to not go in the little kid dance classes, it meant driving 30 minutes each way. They charge you if you miss a class. And so basically we were just too poor, and my parents were not super motivated. They were not helicopter parents, and they were not soccer parents. They were like, we really have to take you. And I'm like, guess I don't really want to be a dancer. So that kind of went away. And then my sister really blossomed as the creative one.
Right.
So I was sort of typecast as the one that was good at math. And all of my aptitude tests were engineering and math and accounting. And I just felt so wrongly assessed. I'm proud that I'm good at math, and that, you know, all that stuff is very, especially now in real estate, is very useful. Yeah. But I wanted to be a creative one too. So I did my best to become ambidextrous, because my sister was left-handed, and I had decided that she was the one that was creative because she's left-handed. So, which again later helped with music, with, you know, percussion with the left hand.
Sort of multitasking on your instruments.
All those years of trying to be left-handed actually paid off. after dance, I played around with some creative stuff in high school with some ceramics, and I got into auto and I got into welding.
Okay.
And so, which were very rebellious choices in the rural town. I think I was the first female to ever take to ever be an advanced welding. And so then I carried that on to college and thought that I would get into like sculpture. But I wasn't incredibly driven, and I didn't have a super solid vision. That's just what I was good at and was interesting. And then I discovered, live music in a really big way. I'd been going to see bands at, 15, 16, 17, but it was the first time that I'd really met someone in a band was that first year of college. This guy I worked with at Starbucks. And it was the first time that I saw that for myself.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds way more fun than welding. I'm just going to be in a band. And the guy that I'm talking to, of course, just looked at me like I was a complete idiot and said, that's not how it works. You don't just get to decide. And I'm like, well, you don't know me very well, so why don't you just let me know if you hear of anything? And he rolled his eyes, and we never talked again until I got Courtney's phone number passed through, however many hands. I hadn't worked there it took 5 months before that number got to me. Because, pre-cell phones, youngsters.
Yeah. Things take time.
Yeah, totally different way of connecting, right? Drummer wanted, and you pull the little tabs off the telephone pole. So I called Courtney, and, he's like, have you ever played in a band? And I said, no. He said, do you play any instruments? I said, no. But I do want to do this. And, if you listen to our early record, you really don't need to be a seasoned musician to contribute to that album. And so it was a very perfect learn on the job album. And as I think all of our albums, we do a lot of OJT. And is a monophonic synthesizer. It's 3 chords. He just said, play the root note until I change my hands to the other note. And it was an incredibly underwhelming job. I felt like I was just pushing buttons because the keys aren't responsive. You can't make a chord. Yeah. I eventually learned how to write bass lines, which is, much more thrilling than just playing the root notes. But percussion was really where being able to fit the percussion in with the bass playing is where I started to get some more, tactical response and fulfill the sort of role of rhythm section, which I never really looked into the job description of bass player, but it certainly was nothing like what I was doing those first 2 records. As far as the drummer is really kind of on his own. He's more playing to the rhythm guitar player than my drone, because drones are like the least fun thing to play too if you're trying to keep a rhythm going.
Yeah.
And so that percussion bridged that gap to where I could still play a drone if needed. Because still today I'll write a complex bass line for the fun of it, and then whittle it back down to something incredibly simple.
Yeah.
So that percussion really, really bridged the gap for me.
Were you kind of like, had you had any kind of musical exposure really? I mean, kind of like, apart from obviously, kind of parents' record collections, but, kind of like nothing.
I took a beginning, after telling that guy that I was going to be in a band, I took a beginning guitar class.
Got you. Yeah.
And was quite shit at it, really. I still can't tune a guitar without using my app. The noise in my head gets so loud that I start to go, is it higher? Is it lower? Is it flat? Is it sharp? I can't tell. And so I have to use an app. I have no internal trust of what I'm hearing. But I did take.
No, go on.
Okay. I took a beginning guitar class, and we had to do an accompaniment, right, for the finals, sing and play. Yeah. And I had just got my tongue pierced. It was the early 90s. So it had doubled in size inside my mouth. That poor teacher, these teachers have to watch kids go through just the worst trends.
Yeah.
So I got the guitar out, and I'm like, butterfly in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train. I'm feeling nearly faded as my dreams. And I don't even know if he knew I was doing Janis Joplin. He looked so disgusted with me for even showing up. I mean, I went through the whole thing just as I did my assignment, but I think I got a C in the class, and that was it. That was the only, I never looked back. I got in a band, and it, took off relatively quickly. So apparently.
I mean, music teachers have a way, don't they, of kind of like being able to make you just wither on the spot with the I remember when I was at school. I mean, my music teacher was he was brutal. I mean, kind of like sort of violent. I was at school, like kind of like at high school in kind of early 80s till sort of 85, and he was like brutal. But he was like, as a teacher, he was just such a perfectionist, like absolutely classically trained, absolute perfectionist. So I was like sort of lining up, outside his class, sort of like rubbing our shoes on the back of the trouser leg to polish them. He was obsessed with shoes being polished. Well, kind of like just crazy.
Yeah, what does that have to do with music? Well, I was just listening to a thing recently about how shame is still such a prevalent authoritative tool in schools. And I mean, as far as like improving our educational system, training teachers to use something other than shame to get the results they want from students would be a really good place to start. It's just so destructive.
Oh, he would definitely shame us. I mean, kind of walking, it's like the sort of school choir, walking along each line. You were just mentioning before about, kind of tone and recognizing tone. He would walk and be listening to people being slightly out of key and like just, humiliating people. I mean, it was just kind of crazy. Talk about formative influences. My God.
Brutal. You know what? I actually did have a little more exposure to music in the 6th grade. I got it. Everyone takes band, right? You learn the recorder in 3rd grade, and then I wanted to play the drums.
Okay.
And I knew that's what I wanted to play. And again, I grew up fairly poor and a girl in a small town. And it was not even considered a legitimate request by anybody.
Yeah.
It was, no, drums are for boys. And it would take, some rich, aggressive parents to go, my daughter's playing the drums, and we just bought her a kit, and screw you guys. No. So I ended up with the family instrument, the clarinet, which is still downstairs, and it can just fuck right off. I'm going to sell it. I hated that. I love clarinet in jazz music now, right?
Yeah.
If anybody had taken the time to show me what an incredible sounding instrument it is, as far as all the wind instruments, it's at the top for me. I mean, it's not saxophone, so we had a plus there. Yeah. Sorry to all people that love saxophone. It's down towards the bottom for me. I think it single-handedly ruined more good rock songs than any instrument. Rolling Stones, I'm talking to you guys. And I sucked at it because I hated it. And so I played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star badly. Every week I challenged the second to the top chair, and I was the second to the last chair, and you would see them just roll their eyes like, oh, here she comes. So bad. And of course I never got anywhere past second to. There was always one person worse than me, though. I would love to talk to that person right now and go, you were last chair. What's your life like?
Yeah. How did you do it? I mean, I was really bad. How did you do it?
Yeah, the only person I ever had to be was the one person worse than me to keep that spot. And why didn't I just challenge the person next to me and work my way up? Like, terrible strategies.
I remember, like, on my first day into high school, I was told by a couple of people, you'll have a singing test to see if you're good enough to go in the choir. And they said, whatever you do, just basically fuck it up. Just fuck it up, whatever you do.
You don't want to go in choir.
And of course, what did I do? I didn't. I went and, because I was kind of quite a good singer. So, and I went and sang, and of course I went in the choir.
And you didn't want to be in choir?
Why did I do that? No, when I saw what was going on there, no, definitely not. But that was it. I was kind of in. I was never getting out of there.
Oh God!
I was like a sort of like high school life imprisonment.
I wish that I did a little bit of choir, but I just wasn't. I just was just so mad I didn't get the solos, that it was
Oh,
kind of,
right. Yeah.
again, I remember writing a snotty letter to the teacher, but of course the popular girls get the solos. Why is it always? There's no way they're the best singers.
Yeah.
You know, why is it the pretty girls are getting the solo? And I was more plain than pretty. Like, I didn't embellish myself in any way. I was kind of a tomboy.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those life truths that you know, don't put it up as much of a fight for later, because the examples are so prevalent. You just sort of surrender to the reality of it, or become a pretty girl. I guess I've had plenty of advantages by being cute, so I won't deny that. But man, I just really resented those guys, and I thought I deserved more, even though I was still incredibly unwilling to put in any work whatsoever. Same as always, I was just like, I want this, but I don't want to work for it. And eventually that totally panned out with the Dandy Warhols. So strategy did play out.
So you basically, you kind of grew up in a sort of small town, and there's the sort of stuff that you were getting interested in. You weren't, you let's say, you know, kind of discouraged, you know, say, or obstacles were kind of put,
or no peers that I really like. When I was discovering, I thought I discovered the Beatles. I had no idea they were huge and influential, and everybody knew about the Beatles, or the psychedelic Beatles anyway. You know, there was more like, I Want to Hold Your Hand Beatles that people knew of because that's what their parents listened to. And so I just thought, like, what's wrong with this world? How does nobody know about the White Album? Like, this is some mind-blowing music right here. And it took me a while to find my people. I did eventually, my senior year, I shaved my head. I dropped all of the AP classes. I don't know if you have those, advanced placement. I dropped out of all of those. I took the auto, the welding, the ceramics, the calligraphy, whatever, fuck off. I worked so hard the other 3 years. I just fucked off for my senior year and took art classes. And found the group of people who were in some form or other counterculture. Because in a small town, you don't get subgroup. The goths are with the hippies and the skaters, and anyone counterculture.
Anybody who's out of the society's norms.
Yes, then you get a little group of 15 kids that kind of band together, which is much more interesting than a bunch of well-defined cliques.
Yeah.
So it was cool to have, because then one kid's older sister turns us on to the young ones and to all the goth music that she was listening to. So she was great. And so you get this diverse input all of a sudden from all these kids. And so my senior year was incredibly formative and eye-opening and uplifting and rewarding. And I realized that there were people like me out there. I didn't have an older sibling, which can make all the difference for a kid if they're going to be outside the norm. But I didn't have anyone to kind of show me the ropes. But this little group of misfits kind of got me through that year and prepared me for the world with the mindset that there are people like me out there.
Yeah. What did that give? Did that give you, kind of, courage and sort of self-belief to sort of carry the kind of what you're doing is, sometimes, when you're kind of paddling against the tide, it's quite hard, isn't it? It takes energy to sort of keep doing it when you're on your own.
My mom was really aggressive about, I think because she grew up much poorer than I did, and with much less available parents. I'm not saying my parents were super great and supportive, but they were smart and capable and had their shit together in some form. No like major drug issues or abuse or any of that. No pedophiles. My mom had a way worse. But she, I think, because of that, and because she got sort of just steamrolled by life pretty early on, she really, really wanted me to be strong. That was the thing that she wanted to make sure was instilled in me, was this strength and this confidence. And so, like, I would get in trouble if I didn't stand up to a teacher. Or I flipped off a cop on the back of a school bus once, and the cop pulled us over. And I thought I had really navigated this little interaction well and got myself out of trouble. So I'm telling my mom about it, and I'm like, yeah. And then he said, that's no way to act like a lady. And she was like, what? you didn't go straight down to that police station and wait. I got in trouble for negotiating, not getting in trouble. She wanted me to get in more trouble and cause more of a stink because what he said was sexist. And so I was like, ugh, I didn't fight hard enough. And there's always these things that your parents say a million times to you, right? And mine was, are you a leader or are you a follower? Are you a leader or a follower? And she just was so worried about me not being strong and independent and a leader that I became almost like viciously so. Like I ended up being pretty aggressive and have like been tempering that now for the next 25 years of like, okay, I've got some great leadership skills, but maybe I don't need to be like such a bitch about it. And but it did help me. It did give me that strength. And when I got into that sort of counterculture scene, one of the most surprising things I saw was how like not strong in these kids. Like, sure, they dressed and looked a certain way and they found things that they identify with, but they didn't really believe in themselves because they didn't have maybe parental support, and they definitely didn't have support from the school, right? They're not in sports. They're not doing well in school, most of them. And so coming from this honor student place where I did have the unknown at the time privileges of being listened to by adults, having a little bit of a say, being able to disagree with a teacher. These kids didn't have any of those privileges, getting away with breaking rules. So I saw football players doing the same exact things that my skateboarder friends were doing and not getting in trouble, and these guys were getting in trouble. So what I ended up doing was being sort of the spokesperson for the counterculture kids of the school, because I knew the way that the other kids were treated. And I wanted to make sure that these guys got treated the same. And that's fair. So I would constantly be in the principal's office, pointing out contradictions, breaking the rules, because I knew how to navigate not getting in trouble for breaking those rules. I knew how to turn them into an example and a talking point. So that's the way that I kind of ended up behaving.
It's funny, isn't it, that you having that. I mean, for me, my parents, my mum grew up on a working farm. My dad, they didn't have a lot of money. My dad was one of 3 kids. He didn't have any money at all. He became sort of self-taught, similar to your dad. He was an engineer, became a mechanical engineer. He's really good at kind of designing, really good at kind of like practical stuff. If you put him in front of a car, he would take it apart and just love that kind of stuff. I had no clue. I was just like, that was like alien to me. But interestingly, like they were all about, kind of like rules, kind of, it's bizarre in some ways. Like my mum she would follow religiously what doctors told her, like religiously, like, doesn't matter. It's like, Mum, this is wrong. She would like, the doctor has got to know, like the fountain of all knowledge. And,
that kind of dogma provides a sense of comfort, though, right? The more you can trust people to think for you, the less you have to worry about making the right or wrong choice.
The right or wrong choice,
not yours. Some people really find comfort in organized religion, Western medicine, rigid protocols at work.
Totally.
Those boundaries. I'm the opposite, but
it's kind of like, when's this piece of work got to be in? You must kind of hit that kind of deadline and stuff like that because the teacher said so. All that kind of stuff, and he's like, oh my God, wow. And eventually, like, you kind of like you do take. Well, I did. I took some of that, and there's still a part of me that thinks, okay, well, I really should do that. But there's also a really strong part of me over the years that has said, fuck that, it's like, this is ridiculous. And and I think this is kind of linked into your own kind of identity and your evolving identity, how you change, how you sort of become your own person. And some people do that, reach that sort of quite early, and others it takes a lot longer for identity to be able to create your own identity, to make them work for you.
Or even to understand that that's something to do. I mean,
exactly.
Go through their whole lives conforming, right? And so their identity is only described by their boundaries that they have so many of. It's scary to not have those boundaries. it's scary to not have a religion that tells you what to do, or a boss that tells you what to do, or to be self-reliant and create your own structure is not the easiest way to go about life. But I mean, for me, with, you know, being quite a pleasure seeker, you know, joy is a really major core value for me versus structure. And so I have to have the freedom to follow, you know, joyful opportunities. And so I don't mind working 60 hours a week. I just couldn't do it for one job that expected me to be there on time. I could do 3 part-time jobs. And I mean, that's why, you know, music and real estate dovetails so well for me. I still afford myself. Sometimes I have to cancel everything and just work, right? So it all has to stay in flux constantly. But I also can afford myself to go travel for a week or two, and work remotely, or have somebody take over for me. And that access to freedom, to being able to leave, to be able to take a wild invitation somebody gives me, and I don't have to go, oh, I have to work, or I don't have enough vacation days, or, you know, I just can't live strapped down like that.
So, and I think you're right. You know what you said earlier, you know, about kind of people living, you know, the same kind of identity, living sort of straight through that. And I think what, you know, kind of what you've done, you know, with us living longer, working longer, and you know, like when my dad was, I mean, he took early retirement when he was like sort of 57, and you know, then did other little sort of bits of things, but he did, you know, kind of one job. And that was the traditional thing. You kind of like got educated, you did a job, and then you retired. And you can't do, you know, you were living a lot longer, right? And you know, you can't do that. You know, all these, you know, people who are employed, you know, a career trajectory is just not, it's not that, you know, kind of one way thing.
No, well, the manager of, I think it was the Long Pigs when we were touring. I think it was the manager. I think his name was Patrick. These are not things I'm good at. He had said something to me. He was in construction. He was a contractor boss guy, and he got bored of it. He'd done it for 10 years, and he's like, I'm going to go tour manage rock bands. I was like, that's a choice. But I really valued, he goes, yeah, you know, I think a person should change careers every 10 years. And at that point, I think the band had been together for a few years, and 10 years felt like forever. I mean, now it's 26. So I didn't necessarily change careers, but I have added and taken away side careers that entire time.
Which I think that you know, those kind of sort of side hustles and sort of side careers and other things that you do, those sort of itches that you get, you want to kind of do them, are becoming much more kind of common these days. And I think, you know, so you I mean, your work now, you know, the real estates, you know, what was the kind of thinking behind that, and how did you kind of sort of practically sort of do it?
Well, I'm big on foresight. Like I've noticed that while people can remember all kinds of details and stuff that are just totally become a fog behind me as time has passed almost immediately, I have a very clear sense of foresight. And so oftentimes I'm able to see quite clearly how something's going to play out, relationships especially. I'm like, oh, this is going to end this way. I'll still do the relationship. And it ends, I'm like, that's what I thought was going to happen. But with the band and the career, I just felt like, okay, let's be realistic. What does a career trajectory for a musician look like? And whether we have peaked or not, I guess, is to be seen, but really based on most statistics and artists' career paths, we've experienced our peak. How far we want to go back down, where we want to level off, how far we want to continue that new operating place out is to be seen. But it only made logical sense to assume that this is not income that I should be relying on for into any distant future. And at this point, you know, while I didn't get rich being a musician, I own a house with a big mortgage. I have a daughter who I didn't save up for college. I have, I have a lifestyle that I would like to maintain and not shrink.
Yeah.
And I have family members that, I really like knowing they can come to me if they need something.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give any of this up. And I didn't have some sort of big savings or whatever. I felt like, okay, you're going to have to find something that goes with music that can take over when it goes away. And then the next thought is, well, good job. You know how to do absolutely nothing, because computers came out the year after I graduated high school. So I'm somewhere on the Luddite spectrum. And what was I going to do? Go back to school for 2 to 4 years?
Yeah.
And my income is significant enough that you couldn't make it as an unskilled worker.
Yeah.
And so that was a little discouraging. There was no long list of options that I could think of. And eventually it took me about 3 years of, those like nights of like, what am I going to do if I didn't think we were going to break up, but maybe there was just no work left. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
So I eventually realized that real estate is very short as far as getting your license. It's something that you can do remotely for the most part. You can hire out the parts if you aren't in town. And the skills required were, okay, good, be good with numbers, check.
Yeah.
Know a lot of people, check. And really know your city. And I'm native, so I know this town. I'm a homeowner. I've lived in several parts of the city. And so it was a list of one option.
Yeah.
There was no weighing out my choices. It was real estate or bust. And then the next thought is, well, I will be good at this. I can do this from all technical and personality. Oh, well, and of course, just creative problem solving and dealing with different kinds of people. I mean, if you can stay in a band for 25 years, you can pretty much, it's an amazing skill set that you get from being in a band and dealing with not only your bandmates, but photographers and journalists and managers and businessmen. I mean, there's so many personality types that you are at least exposed to if you haven't learned how to like gracefully associate with. So that really helped. And then I just kind of waited for the right time where it looked like it came to a point where touring started to feel a bit grueling. And I mean, we were getting older and the buses we could afford were getting older. So, they were getting bouncier and our joints were getting less, we started calling them the giant age machine. And I mean, it used to be after a month of touring, you might be kind of sore and ready to go home. 4 days in and we all look like we're just been out for months.
Like, fuck, how long have we got to go?
Oh my God. Well, and I don't really drink at home. So now I'm like bloated, hungover, my joints are inflamed. And I'm just like, this is brutal.
Yeah.
So as much as we love being on stage and being a band together and all of the things, the actual living on the road was getting, and our kids are growing up without us to some extent.
Tough.
And so I started to realize that the narrative of rock and roll forever and we love what we do, that in interviews, you can say something that's totally authentic and genuine. And then the next time you say it, authentic and genuine, the next time, and then 10 years later, you're like, is that still true?
Is that
like,
still true? Yeah.
And so I invited my bandmates to sort of review what we say our life is and what our life really is, and see if this is even sustainable, or if this is just, I think a lot of musicians tend to live in denial about what their career really is. Like practical and artist aren't always hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so we had some, kind of difficult conversations, but like, let's be real. I mean, these are things I've been thinking for a few years, but I felt like we should all like get real about it. And we way rolled back our touring. and got kind of the work smart, not hard attitude cultivating. And we do now what we call exotic weekends. And
Brilliant.
it might be Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas for 2 shows, but it's an exotic weekend and you haven't been on the roads. You're so excited and grateful, right?
Yeah.
And so we turned this like getting beat down by so much touring into something we totally look forward to.
Yeah.
And we brought all of this joy back into our lives by taking all this touring out of it and not playing all the interstitial cities in between the big ones. We're like, you know, sorry, Cleveland, but you're going to have to fly to the same place we're flying to. And that's how it is.
This is like the kind of the really sort of positive side of branding, isn't it? You know, you kind of brand it as sort of an exotic weekend.
Yeah.
And in your mindset, it's like, okay, we're going on a fun weekend. You know, this isn't going to be fun.
We're leaving the kids. We're getting a hotel. We're not getting a tour bus, and I'm getting room service.
Yeah.
And it's great. Instead of like, if I eat one more over described room service meal, because you know, you just want to cook your own food by the end of tour. Now room service is fun again. Hotels are fun again. Being in like Denver is fun again. And that was the most important thing we did for sort of our, you know, heritage years that we're in. And we do, you know, really cute things like if the venue's too big, it's the closed balcony tour or the autumn years. And so we have a really good, we have a really good sense of humor about what it's like to be sort of a middle class working band. You know, the middle class for musicians almost is much smaller than the real shrinking middle class.
Yeah.
You can do, you know, 5-star hotels and 2 tour buses or more, or you're in a van. Yeah. And so kind of one jalopy of a bus and you're doing theaters, there just isn't that many in that category.
In that category, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where we are with that. And so that afforded me the time to really establish my real estate career. And now I've closed a deal on every single tour since then. I'll be in the bathroom after the show negotiating repairs on my way to DJ the after party.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, talk about multitasking. It's a lot. It's a big workout for the brain to be switching back and forth from those kind of mindsets.
So you kind of like, you know, like you said earlier, you know, within the, you know, sort of music industry, you've got so many kind of, you know, relationships and people to manage and to work with, you know, kind of you have to collaborate with people that you perhaps don't want to collaborate, but you have to do it, you know, and, you know, so you must, you know, kind of develop and, you know, have just such a wide range of kind of skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, some
that you can then take forward, you know, with what you're doing now.
Absolutely. And I was always sort of the go-to I ran our merchandise company. I really didn't want my math business mind to atrophy by being a rock star, which super easy to do. So I made sure and started that off right off the bat to make sure that I still had numbers in my life every day. And these kind of small business decisions, but still some acumen that I could develop over the years. And that really helped. And then if say a venue didn't want to pay us. Or like I was who got sent in. To any kind of negotiating the merch to get us a better percentage, taking on bootleggers in Manchester. Little did I know how scary those guys are, but I did indeed stop them from selling any bootleg merch at the next show in London. So.
Oh right, okay.
Very proud of that.
Well victory. Done on that one. Well done.
It was in the Manchester newspaper. Some crazy bitches fighting with the merch bootleggers.
Oh my God! Right, yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, I got spit on, and like it was
pretty hardcore.
It was an actual fight. Fists pulled. It was really much. I had no idea what I was walking into, but those are the kind of things that I did over the years, and interfacing with our accountants. And yes, for me, it was a priority to develop those skill sets. I really enjoy the confidence that I get knowing that I can talk to Hillary Clinton's diplomats when we happen to be in the same hotel. Like that's not intimidating, maybe a little, but like I can do it. Or you know, some grumpy club owner, or you know, some accountants that I don't feel like are doing a good job, or band managers that are, you know, or labels that are wanting us to do things that we think is a really bad choice, and how to get on the same page creatively, which is probably the hardest of all communication endeavors. But learning from all of those and going in with a sense of enthusiasm and kind of open-mindedness, that's my personality. So I can't say that every musician gains those skills. They might just stay stubborn and do their thing, but I definitely feel like I have a growth mindset and enthusiasm for learning how to communicate with every kind of person.
Yeah. Have you read anything by Carol Dweck about growth mindset?
No,
She's
I'm very into Brene Brown right now. I'm reading.
Okay, yeah.
Daring Greatly is the one I'm reading right now, and then I think Dare to Lead is the next one, and I'm like, I'm in. No, if you've got some good books,
I'll send you some stuff of Carol's. She's great. I mean, I'm a big believer in, you know, what you said, you know, kind of growth mindset, and also I think now that with what we've kind of, you know, the world has kind of gone through the last year, and, you know, kind of, you know, more and more people, you know, kind of working at home, and we're, you know, that sort of human connection is different now, you know, because we haven't been able to do it sort of physically. So, you know, and we rely a lot, don't we, on you know, assessing body language, and it's much harder to do that, you know, kind of, you know, when you're just doing it remotely. So
yeah,
I think
or
that,
like
you know,
text with an emoji.
yeah, exactly. I know.
Not trying to be
what does that mean? Okay, I'm in trouble with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think teeth a lot where they're like, ooh, like, I just said a thing. Is that okay?
I think my favorite one is it's one where the eyes are just horizontal lines, and the mouth is just a horizontal line as well, and it's just basically, for fuck's sake, it's just like, here we go again.
I like looking at I don't know why they always throw random ones into the most used screen. I'm like, I did not put a strawberry.
I did not use that.
Yeah, I did not use that. But I like looking at those as a general sort of wellness check-in.
Yes.
Like, oh, wow, you made steaming mad emoji a lot of times this week. You've been in a bad mood. But when it's all like, I'm happy emoji, and, you know, it's not angry and crying emojis, I'm like, okay, you're doing pretty good this week.
You do pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to check in.
I think you know, kind of like emotional intelligence, you know, I think it's like sort of super important these days for, you know, for kind of getting things done, because getting things done it's really complicated. You know, it's very difficult to get things done, and I think, you know,
well, everyone has to blaze their own trail, right?
Yeah.
Paths aren't as clear set, and for someone like your mom, this is a disaster.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, you know, that was, you know, emotional intelligence, kind of forget it.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, where do we learn our emotional intelligence? We're relying on our parents. Well, basically, it's up to you to kind of pick it up as you go along, and there's no, you know, that we're still not teaching mindfulness and emotional intelligence and conflict resolution and you know, how to express your feelings to other people and how to be empathetic of other people's feelings. That stuff is not being taught in school, at least to the level of sex education. Like at least just a you know, a week where you focus on it. But really, there should be one period a day that is all emotional and mental well-being.
Absolutely.
Way more important than history, or, I mean, yes, okay, I know the value of history, but way more important than just the basic academics.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's kind of getting a sort of balance between the you know, kind of tangible stuff that you know, the factual, the, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, how to do maths, you know, how to, you know, learn about history, learn about geography and blah blah blah, but balance it with the, you know, the other stuff, the
how to
more
be
intangible, how to be a human being.
Yeah. that doesn't have their, I mean, obviously we have a huge anti-bullying, which they, and there is some offshoots of that are making its way into schools and helping people. But it's really, really a missed opportunity to not be establishing this in our curriculum like yesterday.
Yeah. So how did you find the adjustment, sort of moving into
COVID?
Into well, you can talk about that as well, but I was thinking real estate, but also kind of COVID as well. I mean, because that's a huge kind of change, and probably one in the way that we live that's going to kind of carry on.
Right. That as soon as people were like back to normal, even 2 weeks, and I go, what do you? I don't want that. This is an opportunity to totally review, revise, and improve what humans have been doing in relation to income and workforce. So stop going back to normal. For me, because this is quicker than real estate, it was amazing because I am a chronic overbooker. I have a really hard time saying no because my interests are so varied and I want to do everything, and especially if it's for a good cause. Now here I am like agreeing to way too much work.
I mean, how you even agreed to do this? I mean, God.
It took a while, didn't it? Like, you're not the only one. There's like 6 or 7 podcasts that I'm like, don't give up on me. You're going to have to keep bugging me. It's not annoying me. I'm sorry. I promise we'll do this. But that is a great example. And so when COVID hit and the city canceled the fundraiser that was like supposed to happen 3 days after that. And then I just sat on my computer and deleted everything in my calendar. And it was the most cathartic, like spirit lifting, like, oh my God, I have nothing to do. And of course, I totally filled it in with like creating a variety show that's like VH1 meets Captain Kangaroo or Pee-wee's Playhouse. And I did that every week for months, and it gave me so much to do with costumes and skits and the DJ said it was a music based, this week we're reenacting the video for Sabotage, and this week we're doing the scene from Beetlejuice. This week we're doing a Spice Girls spoof where we're all pandemic related. We had toilet paper spice and it was hilarious. So a busy person finds a way to be busy. But my obligations were gone, and it was the freedom to be busy with just whatever happened to interest me at the moment. That's a completely different kind of busy than grinding every day to fulfill these commitments that you've made and kind of regretting because you made too many of them. And I live in that space a lot where I'm happy to do each individual thing. I just wish I had a little more time to do them. So clearing that calendar and vowing to myself I would never go back to that level of busy.
How are you doing with that?
We're not all the way back yet, right? So nothing's open. So I have no DJ gigs, I have no concerts, I have no fundraisers. No, I just have a ton of real estate and lots of music, but just not in front of anybody. So for me, COVID was this wonderful blessing, and I'm always hesitant to celebrate the days of COVID. Because obviously, it is incredibly tragic for not only loss of life, but the economy and the slew of foreclosures that are going to come when these moratoriums are up. The massive increase in homelessness already. So to celebrate COVID is very, very sensitive, but personally it was really, really good for me. And I do have I had enough savings and was able to sort of weather it in this very relaxed way. I didn't experience a lot of fear or a lot of worry that I know. I mean, not personally, but 1 degree I've seen, the tragedy and the fear that COVID caused. So like I said, I'm hesitant to celebrate, but to be honest, personally, it was very healthy for me. It was, I really needed that. And of course I went nowhere and didn't want anybody, I didn't get COVID. So that was also a blessing. But as far as like transitioning into real estate, we transitioned from salaries to we'll pay ourselves when there's money to pay ourselves for music. So that was a little bit scary because we've been just living off a reasonably comfortable salary for years. I would not recommend that to musicians, by the way, because you end up asleep at the wheel for the business side of things. You're getting your check, so you're not worrying about what's happening, and you could end up in debt hundreds of thousands of dollars around the planet if you're not careful. And that is what happened to us. So we were able to correct that, get out of the red, get into the black, tour way less. And so then I hopped into real estate, and I mean, you got to think, I got in the band when I was 18. 1 year of community college, a couple of, dishwashing jobs. I hadn't really had to, I'm starting a business for myself. We're independent contractors, and there's no one to blame, not even a singer. I don't even, there's literally, I've been blaming Courtney for everything for 25 years. And so now
where is he? Come here. I need you.
He must have messed this up for me somehow. So I had to be completely self-reliant at starting a business in my 40s, where life has been in some ways handed to me. I got in this band, and I'd always had side hustles, but they could fail or not. They weren't going to affect my life. Failing at this, I had no backup plan for what else I was going to do. Whether I liked it or not, I needed to be good at it, at least until I found something else. And it took me a year to get a transaction through. And that was quite an ego bruising, and I had to have some serious self-talk of, hey, this doesn't happen overnight, and new people would come in and have a deal right away. And I would just but I spent that year building a business, which is something I'd never thought. I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I do now, because I look back over all the side hustles that I'm always creating some kind of business for me. So I just spent that year organizing contacts, figuring out, how to brand myself. How do I want to interact? What kind of agent do I want to be? And so it was a little bit intense and discouraging at times, and also just the culture shock of office life.
I
don't know if you've seen Joe versus the Volcano.
No.
I think it's a Tom Hanks movie, and he has this really depressing job, in a basement with flickering, lights, and he's just so sad. I need to rewatch it because I think of the little bits I remember. And he has this lamp that really kind of means everything to him. I think it's got a Hawaiian girl on it, and it turns, and his boss makes him get rid of the lamp, right? And it was his one thing that gave him comfort. So when I got into this cubicle setting, I was like, oh God, what have I done? And so I'd have my little full spectrum lighting to counteract the fluorescent lighting, and my little things that brought me some comfort, like everyone's cubicle does, pictures of their kids. But and using fax machines and filing paperwork all the time. And it was just, there's definitely some aspects of it that I was like, I'm not so sure about. What was I thinking? What the fuck was I thinking? But when it comes to working with the clients, the front end stuff, I've been so blessed to work with only friends and friends of friends and fans. Small niche of whenever a fan moves to Portland, I get hired. So I've got people that have come up from San Francisco, from Denver, and they get this undivided attention from this musician. There's this complete shift of dynamic. Which I get some people wasting my time. They're like, oh, if I reach out to Zia and say I'm interested in a house, she'll talk to me.
Spend half an hour with her. Great.
Don't get any ideas, people. I see through your bullshit. So that has happened, but the reward of, especially with my friends being artists and getting to go to bat for these people who didn't think that they would be homeowners is so incredibly rewarding for me, and has made it be a job and a career that I actually really love.
I mean, that's really kind of, I think that's a great sort of niche that you got into, with that sort of clientele, that you kind of build your rep, in that sort of niche, and then that's it. So you you don't have to go elsewhere and
cold calls and
cold calls,
I can't do it. I won't.
No,
I that's not why I'm doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When people come, and of course with music, I could be somewhat a part-time realtor. I'd say maybe 3/4 time if you counted it by hours, but I would half time if we did it by division in my brain. So that took some of the pressure off of having X amount of clients. This year's obviously different. I'm at the beginning of the year going, well, you're not touring until December, so I guess you effectively need to double your business right now, which you try to do that in sales. Like, that's not how it works. And so I'm like learning how to be this like dedicated full-time realtor with sticking with my business model of friends and friends of friends. And so far so good. Somehow magically, I just told the universe to double my business and it has doubled. I hope that part of that is people were on hold during COVID. So I'm looking at the list and the list is shrinking
they were going to do it anyway. They're going to come back.
So we'll see how the year goes, but the working with friends thing is what, and a lot of agents don't work with friends. They don't want to worry about things getting like personal and having conflict. And for me, I feel like I have the communication skills to navigate, and I've been through some ugly deals with friends, and I, as far as I know, haven't lost any friends over it.
Yeah. Well, you kind of like, you sort of do it the right way. There's, everything's very sort of transparent and.
I'm not a cowboy realtor. I don't play games. I don't, I'm not a zero sum. I don't operate from scarcity. I operate from abundance and transparency. And it is very clear that I am dedicated when I'm working with these people. So
I think, the other thing is like, with setting up in this, you said you didn't have a kind of backup plan. So you had to make sure that it worked. As we kind of get older, there's a risk in that. As we get older, we kind of like, generally sort of speaking, a lot of people that tend to get more risk averse as they get older.
Scary. Well, and also, there's a physical component to that. I am not a neurologist, but it's my understanding that the decision part of the brain, where decisions compute, moves from your like, life is interesting and an adventure, and I'm going to do these life-threatening things that, jumping off bridges and crazy things teenagers do. That moves over to the, hey, I want to live the full, span of life that is expected of a human. And that part of the brain, the preservation, and that's where decision-making skills start to gravitate towards, obviously in young adulthood, give or take.
That's
who you talk to. That has shifted, and I think it rests firmly in the preservation status quo style of thinking. The older you get, so there's a reason it gets more.
There's a reason.
And I think that I'm pretty dedicated to keeping that malleable, and so it is a muscle that I flex. My adventure muscle, my risk muscle. And I've always been a person that likes change, and there's people that kind of are born not really liking change because it's scary. But I have a short attention span, and I need a sense of adventure sort of constantly. So for me, it works. And I wouldn't be happy in a lifelong career having my bennies and my 401k and just stay the course until I retire. Even now I'm in real estate, and I'm like, just pulled all my equity out of my house, and I'm like, I'm finding an investment property. I'm going to flip this bitch. Good luck in this market. I don't know what crazy ass plan, but my principal broker who oversees my transactions was like, Zia, of everybody, you are the person that, is the most willing to just walk off a cliff and assume that you're going to land safely and just kind of dive headfirst into adventures and business endeavors and trust that I will figure it out.
Is that your gut instinct? You trust your gut instinct?
I guess so. I mean, I see myself as a highly capable person as far as problem solving. You know, maybe there's some discipline issues, self-discipline issues that I'm still developing. Those are harder to develop as an adult, but my ability to figure it out, whatever it is strong. And that gives me a lot of confidence to try new things. On the other hand, I've never really failed big, and it's probably inevitable that I'm going to lose my ass somewhere at some point. And you know, and then we'll open the entire self-help section of how failure makes you more successful, right? I haven't even had to crack any of those books yet. So I know where to go when that happens.
It's like, while we haven't opened up properly and fully yet, you can write that sort of chapter of the book. Just in case, you know.
I'll be okay if I never have to read any of those books about how failure makes you successful. But I also understand, with having, you know, a strong sense of foresight, that it's quite likely that one of these things is really gonna bite me in the ass on a, you know, not properly vetted endeavor. But so far so good, and it keeps me interested in life.
So for somebody that you know, kind of like embraces change, for those that don't, and I think that those that don't are going to struggle a little bit, you know, as kind of this kind of I think there's like this sort of multi-stage life now that's kind of happening. For those that maybe want to change but don't know how to, there's something kind of holding them back. What would you say to them?
Like a pep talk?
Yeah.
One thing I would say is the only difference, everyone is scared. I think that what is really easy for people that are not taking those steps in life, I think it's easy for them to look at the people that are taking those steps as probably not scared. And I think what's really important to know is it's scary for everybody. It's just a decision. You know, and so yes, I'm scared when I do any of these. I mean, I just took all my home equity that I've built up for 20 years out, and it's sitting in the bank, and I'm going to put it somewhere that might not give me the money back. Of course I'm scared. I feel like I'm being a crazy person, but at the same time, you know, there's so much to learn and so much to experience, and especially if it's necessary that you make a change. Like I'm making some changes voluntarily right now, but those changes that are necessary for survival and growth, you just have to make the choice to do them. It's just a choice, right?
It's a choice,
Yeah, and it's still scary, but it's never as scary as you thought it was going to be. That's the other thing. I mean, think of all those things that you like hesitated and hesitated and hesitated and then did it, and it wasn't that bad.
You're talking to the converted. I hear you totally.
So I just try to remind myself I bought this house when I was 24, and I was making no money yet with the band. I totally did it with lots of roommates, right? I just filled my house up with people, and they helped me pay my mortgage. That could have gone so terribly wrong for a 24-year-old to be buying a house and touring all the time, leaving my house with virtual strangers. And so I think back on those decisions that seem a little bit crazy and realize that it turned out okay for the most part. And like I said, I have not been confronted with major failure, and I see how somebody with having experienced major failure would be a little more scared the next time. So I obviously can't speak to that. I feel pretty lucky with everything turning out okay. But when I get scared, I look back over the risky decisions that I made, and I remind myself that I figure it out. It doesn't always turn out the way I expected. But it does turn out, and I was able to figure it out and navigate, you know, some of the scary moments, and then that gives me the courage to make another brave decision.
Fabulous.
So, what's that?
That's fabulous. That's brilliant, Zia. I think you're off the hook. I think we're done now.
Good.
That's fantastic. Really amazing to listen to you and to kind of talk about these things. I think it's been really lots of fun. So thanks very much.
Good. I love talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm kind of like a bit of a nerd about it. I'm kind of quite fascinated with it. Yeah, so hopefully everybody else will be as well.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really touch on like all of the kind of creative edge of, you know, like some of the stuff I read of yours, you were talking about kind of that constant creative edge in the context of the music career, like what music choices we make. So that's okay that we didn't go there, but
we didn't get time for that one. Maybe we'll do another one on that one anyway.
I'm quite wordy. Yeah, you usually get about 2 questions because I'm going to talk for 30 minutes about each one.
I'll know better next time. Keep the questions shorter.
Yeah. You got to cut me off. Well, I'm happy to do a volume 2 if this one
Brilliant.
goes well.
Oh, yeah, it will do for sure. We'll do that definitely.
Good.
All right, stay on the line. I'll just stop recording, but stay on the line.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.